afternoon, everybody. This is Dolores Bunch Keemer, and this is another episode of Let's Communicate. Today in my studio, I have a special guest of mine, a good friend. Her name is Lula Gilliam, and she has a radio show on as well on
860.
860 Love 860, and her show is called Yes, Our Children Matter. She also has a nonprofit that is Youth Enhancement Services. And Lula, can you tell us a little bit about what Youth Enhancement Services does?
We work with young people who've left the public school system. We help them get their GEDs. We also assist them in post-secondary options through our local technical and two-year colleges, trying to give them the skill set that they need to earn a living and sustainable wage.
Wow. So what we are going to talk to you about today is going to be we're going to dive right into the education topic. We know that the president has a new initiative that is out. They rolled it out at Morehouse last weekend. It's called the Excellence in Education for African Americans. Mm-hmm. Now, they also have a Excellence in Education for Latinos. Mm-hmm. So the president of the United States is concentrating on two areas of society that really need to be educated. Executive order says, in a nutshell, that gives all the mandates on what needs to be done, and his objective is by the year 2020 to have threefold the amount of students enrolled in college. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that? Do you think we could?
This the My Brother's Keeper initiative that he initially started talking about?
Yes.
And rolled out in February.
Yes, this is the actual program. That's the executive order. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The actual program is My Brother's Keeper and Girls Rising. Mm-hmm. The King Center this last weekend did the rollout for Girls Rising, and Morehouse had the executive order, mm-hmm, and then they also did the My Brother's Keeper there. It was a 2-day summit that they did there. It's going to be all over the country. The next one is going to be in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm. Well, Dolores, we've talked about this many times. Mm-hmm. It's not resources that are the problem. Mm-hmm. The problem is, whenever something like this happens, then you have everybody trying to run and get that little pot of money. You have people who were once janitors trying to run programs. Mm-hmm. That's always the issue in our community. Mm-hmm. Folks coming in that are disingenuous, mm-hmm, that really know nothing about how to do anything in the academic realm, who just come in and steal the money. And then 20 and 30 years later, we're sitting on a porch sipping tea with our teeth falling out, and we are having the same conversation about how badly the African American and the Hispanic community is doing. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping that the president will put some safeguards in place so that the regular cast of characters will not come in and steal the money.
Right. I think one of the things that he wants to do is that he wants all of us that are really doing the work, mm-hmm, to show him that, mm-hmm, we are doing the work. Mm-hmm. If we stick our head up and say, hey, this is what we are doing, I think that is one of the catalysts that he's looking for to see how he's going to fund people. So in the past, you can look and see different examples of that. Like Mr. Canada, he did mm-hmm, a lot of work on charter schools.
The Harlem Children's
mm-hmm,
Zone, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if we can get people of that ilk and folks like us who are out here every day in the trenches who really know what's going on, then I think it has the opportunity to be phenomenal in terms of the impact for our young people.
Right.
But so, how do we make sure that happens?
Yes, yes.
And us in the community.
Right. So let's have a discussion about what are we looking at? What do you face every day when you're interacting with your students? What are you seeing? What is the main statistics that you're seeing? What kind of home upbringing that do they have? Mm-hmm. What's going on with the child?
Well, disproportionately, we know that throughout the country, African American men are in trouble. They are in crises. They are leaving school in record numbers. I think I mentioned on my radio show at Banneker High School, which is predominantly black, they have a graduation rate of 40%, 41%. Creekside, which is also predominantly black, a 50% graduation rate. Mm-hmm. Atlanta Public School System, which is primarily African American, have overall throughout the school system a 58% graduation rate. We can look at Clayton County, DeKalb County, in areas with large African American concentration. The high school graduation rate is very dismal. Crime rates are high. And if these young people do not, come on board and understand that the dreams that they're dreaming about, or if some of them are dreaming, to become whatever, something that's legal, it's going to take education. Education is the only thing I know within the Black community that will help to somewhat level the playing field.
Right. You and I both talked about the statistics on how each school was graduating versus a graduating class. And we talked about Crim High School of having a graduation class of 240, and then graduating, who actually walked across the stage, was 18 people. That's 7.5% of the people in the graduating class graduated. That is ridiculous. I also looked at some of the other statistics that you sent me, and I think there were a total of 5 schools that graduated no one. So I was at the Crime and Safety Summit with Commissioner Eves. He just had that the other evening, and number of the heads were there for each department. Well, Chief Foley was there. He brought up Crim High School twice. So I went to him afterward and I said, Chief Foley, you brought up Crim High School twice. I said, do you realize the graduation rate, etc.? He said that he realizes that, but that's an alternative school. The statistics may show that, but that's not the true statement of what's going on over there. That
either they're graduating or they're not.
That's what I tried to get him to understand. Why would they put out statistics that say this? If he said, well, he was standing up for the children. At that summit, I have mixed feelings about that. But let's talk about the graduation rate. So we're talking about Atlanta Public Schools having a 58% graduation rate. You're finding that a lot of those children, that 58% that is dropping out, are ending up on your doorstep.
Many of them are. And what we also find, and I have to say this in defense of high schools, is they're not supposed to be teaching children how to read. They're not supposed to be teaching children in 9th grade how to write and how to do basic math. In our program, we're getting 16 to 24-year-olds who cannot do basic fractions, who can't do just simple things. They don't know how to borrow in subtraction. Those things are not supposed to occur in high school. In defense of high school, let me say this. What we have in our community is a parental accountability problem. We have that, and we're not talking about it. We want to keep embracing, those poor parents, those poor families. All of that is well and good, but you have brought these children into the world, and you're leaving them defenseless against a huge world out here that will not make room for them if they don't have the skill set. Sometimes they don't make room for you when you do have the skill set. So parents need to step up to the plate, and they need to be better parents. And then we hear a lot of parents or a lot of organizations say, well, they are not, really friendly to parents when they come into the school system. Bump that. All you have to do is start writing. They don't want anything put on paper.
Right.
And a lot of parents want to show up and act all silly and talk all crazy. They can dismiss that. But they cannot dismiss a document that you write to the principal and you copy the superintendent and the board members.
Right.
So that we need to train parents how to access information and then how to utilize that information for the best use for their children.
This is such a systemic problem in that there's catch-22s everywhere. You have parents that are not educated. They're probably working 2-3 jobs. They probably hardly ever see their children. We're asking them to advocate for their children. When I was in a meeting with Kathy Cox years ago, she was having this exact same dilemma in certain areas. There are areas that there's so much poverty, the parents are literally working all the time. This is how their children get into mischief, and so it's such a systemic problem that we're. What would you suggest to be the place that we should start? Because it's going to be difficult to
Well,
solve.
the first place we have to start is stopping that woe is me mentality. I don't know one person, myself included, you included, who's not going through something. And in a state like Georgia, where we have the Hope Scholarship for the 4-year colleges and the 2-year community colleges, we have the Hope Grant for the technical colleges. There are technical colleges throughout Georgia, none more than 30 minutes or 30 miles from each citizen. If you want to do better, some of these colleges offer classes 7 days a week. That includes Sunday. You know, we want to talk about, okay, you're working 2 and 3 jobs. That's the situation that you've put yourself in,
Right.
and the situation that you keep yourself in, but you don't have the good sense to stop having children to keep yourself in these situations. So the first thing we have to do, Dolores, is to get away from that, oh, the woe are these parents mentality. Because just like you can spend time laid up with somebody all weekend long, you can find your way to Atlanta Technical College
Right.
to take some classes in something that will earn a living wage for you and these children that you brought into the world. These children have gotten away from us because they are so pissed off about being poor.
Right.
You know,
That's
you
right.
have all these parents telling them, especially the single mothers, you're telling their little boys, you're the man of the house. So they're out there doing whatever in the streets they feel they need to be the provider in that household. You,
And
you
she's
have
happy to get his income.
and a lot of the and I've had a lot of the little dope boys in my program over the years who give their mama the money, or those who steal TVs out of people's homes, who bring it home, and the mamas or daddies don't say anything. You know, until we start telling the truth in our communities
Yes.
about what's happening in our communities,
Right.
and not keep embracing, as I keep saying, that woe is me or woe is them mentality, nothing is going to change in our communities. We have people in our communities who can tell you where every free food giveaway is.
Right.
We have people who can tell you where all the free stuff is. But let's ask them, do you know where this training program is for HVAC or electrician? Let's start having those conversations.
Right.
Because if we don't teach people how to fish, you know, food giveaway programs and all that will feed them for a day. That's giving them a fish for a day. Until we can teach them about processes, then we're going to have this conversation if we're both alive 30 years from now.
Right. One of the things you brought up was the technical schools. That, I think, is one of the major problems, is that we took technical out of high school, even the introduction of it. The introduction of being a mechanic, the introduction of being a carpenter, of being a horticulturist, of being a forestry, etc., etc. These trades, they should have at least introduced them to, so at least the kids could find out if this, in fact, is what I want to do.
They had
Now
options.
Yeah, now they got to go to technical school to actually figure out for the first year, what do I actually want to do?
Well, you know what happened? It was these highfalutin black folk, the so-called middle-class black intelligentsia, the one who were mistakenly called the talented 10th by Du Bois, who thought that, you know, we were tracking kids if you were putting them in these type programs. They were so ignorant. They did not even recognize or care that not every child is going to go to college, is going to go to that 2-year or that 4-year university. It's not for everyone.
Right.
And Lord knows, me with my Berkeley degree, the HVAC and the brick mason make more than I do. So while our folks, these so-called talented 10th people, were turning up their noses at those type programs that were in the high schools, you know, the auto mechanic, the carpenter, you know, our kids who were disinterested in going to college, they just started dropping out. And we allow that foolishness to stay in play in the black community.
So now they have no options. We'll come right back to this. We got to go to break, but we'll come right back with Lula Gilliam to talk more about this subject. Hey, and you're back with Dolores Bunch-Keemer on Let's Communicate, and our guest today is Lula Gilliam.
Hello.
Lula is she's the founder of Youth Enhancement Services, and the subject we're talking about today is how do we get our kids back? What is the initiatives that the president has put in place for education and excellence in education? So, Lula, before we went to break, we were talking about the technical schools, and I don't know if you finished your thought on that.
Yeah, just that we need to be open to options for our young people and stop turning them off and talking down to them if they are not interested in that 2-year or that 4-year college. If they want to be an auto mechanic or if they want to be an HVAC, let's embrace that and let's support them, even if you're one of those upper middle class parents, with, you're a teacher, doctor, lawyer, whatever. If your son or daughter want to go to a technical school, be all right with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I agree wholeheartedly with you on that. And I think because the kids are not having that introduction, they don't know quite how to get into being a cosmetologist or a mechanic. And when they finally get it, they're like 20, 21 years old. Mm-hmm. Well, they could have already been through their program already, and then they could have been doing their internship when they were 20, 21 years old and finally getting their license so that they could go out and start their own or get their own booth. Mm-hmm. So I agree with you. I think that we are not doing our children a justice by taking that out of the schools. I also think that we are not doing our kids a justice by thinking that the criminal and the justice system are supposed to take care of this problem for us. We cannot ask politicians to take care of this problem for us. We are not getting it. Mm-hmm. So at the Crime and Safety Summit that Commissioner Eves had, this is the second time I have not gotten a chance to get up and speak, but I think that we should not expect them to. We should have a better alternative than to putting the kids in jail. Almost every person there wanted them to do something about crime and safety. Mm-hmm. The crime and safety starts at home.
Yes, it does.
You have got to, when those kids are not, if they're not going to school, there needs to be a truant officer. The truancy thing needs to be put back into place. Mm-hmm. And then we need to have our parents become better parents. If you have a child and you're just having a child now, you need to go to parenting classes. They need to make that mandatory. If these girls are going to get pregnant at 15 years old, 14 years old, 11 years old, as I found out here, they need to go to parenting classes, period.
What we have to recognize too is not everyone is a parent. And it does not matter how many classes you send some of these folks to, that will still not make them a parent. And I was sharing with someone a couple of weeks ago that analogy, just by my standing in my garage does not make me a car.
Right.
Just because someone had a child, they incubated a child for 9 months, and the child is here. And we see it all the time with the level of abuse that these children have in their lives, and even ending up in death sometimes. We can't keep looking the other way and thinking that if we send this person to parenting class, that they won't put their cigarettes out on little Johnny, or that they won't give that baby up to the boyfriend or the girlfriend to sexually molest. So some horrid things are happening to children out here because we keep trying to make everybody a parent.
Right. Right. I mean, in one case where I heard from a CASA worker that lady had 7 children. She just kept on spitting out babies. So the judge said to her, "Are you, these 7 children that you have, you need to come to court for." She was in her last. This was the second extension they gave her for 2 years. So they have 2 years to get their act together. She told him, he said, "This is your last chance. Do you want your children back?" She said, yeah, she wanted her children back, but that she hadn't met compliance. So he said, well, he was going to take her children. Do you know that this woman told him that, "Take them, I'll just make more"? And so we have to change this mentality.
We have to recognize mental illness too.
Yeah.
And that's a large part of what's going on in communities. She is visibly mentally ill. She has to be mentally ill.
But
so
he
what
can't
the judge
order castration.
No, but what he can order is for her to go into an institution to try and uncover some of those deep crevices in her mind. What is it that makes you feel that you're not worth loving, or that you don't mind bringing children into the world that you're not taking care of? There is a mental imbalance and instability there. And he can mandate that she goes into and get some type of assistance.
Another thing is that when you look at the crime statistics, very high in some areas. We know that the majority of the crime is committed in our areas. So we are technically stealing from ourselves. And another thing that I wanted to bring up, so I wanted to talk to you about that. And another thing I wanted to bring up was that I was talking to a restaurateur yesterday, and he said that, well, I would like to do business with you because my goal this year is to do business with as many Black people as possible, because I want to see my money circulate 5 to 6 times in the Black community like it is in others. So how do we get how do we change our society's thinking to, at that level of where a child is, to that they have to support their own community? How do we get that community back involved in that child's life?
Well, it always starts, as we said, with the home, but also that second step is the school system. Who has your child longer than a teacher? Great number of hours are spent in the school system. So if parents would start going to PTA, what businesses recognize, they recognize the power of PTAs. And if you have a strong PTA, then you can go to businesses and get all kinds of things done in the community.
That's true.
There is power rather in numbers. And when people start recognizing the power they have, then we can move the needle, so to speak.
We talked about this a little bit about that topic about 2 weeks ago, where Gwinnett County schools, the only difference that makes Gwinnett different than maybe Cobb County schools in the more affluent areas is that the Gwinnett parents realize that they have to invest in their child's education. So they are not going to have the people who have disabilities and that have behavioral disabilities in the classroom with their child, even though they have to be there. They are going to put them, they're going to build a room where that child can be, work with a professional, and they're going to have the child in that room. That's the difference between the counties that are more affluent. I mean, the areas that are more affluent. They realize that they need a technical facility, and Gwinnett has a beautiful technical facility. They put computers in the schools. Our kids in the poor black areas, they don't have, and other areas, they don't have computers that they can bring home. These kids have computers. They have a computer lab, so if the computer breaks, they can bring it and get it fixed for free.
Well, you know what, Dolores? I find in our community that our priority is not our children. It's not that we don't have some disposable funds in our community. If we look at the amount of money spent in the black community on hair, I mean, those containers coming from India and wherever else that hair is coming from, they are coming nonstop.
Right.
You know that they replaced our bookstore up on Camp Creek, Barnes and Nobles, with a beauty supply place. I went in there, I just wanted to see. They have every kind of hair you can name up in there, and it is packed up in there with folks buying hair. And then the nail shops. Now, I'm not one that really goes to get my nails done and all that, but when I see the number of black women going in and out of there, my question becomes, are your kids academically where they need to be, or are you willing to forego getting that hair or getting those nails done to make sure that you get a tutor for your child if Johnny can't spell cat?
Yeah.
You know, what are we willing to do in
Right.
our community
So-
to fix what's
Right.
wrong?
You're saying that the priorities are off, and I agree with you.
Priorities are off.
I mean, they had a YouTube video that was out about a mother was getting her 2-year-old extension nails put on her 2-year-old.
Well, I see even in my neighborhood when I'm driving home, little girls with extensions on her hair going almost down to her feet. A little body so short, it looks like she's going to tip over.
It's ridiculous on how we're so obsessed with hair and with nails. It's like we're not happy in our own skin. We're not happy with our own hair, so we have to put on this persona. By the time the kids get to the adult age, they're not going to have any hair.
Everything in our community, all the challenges that we have, it's a result of the priorities that we've placed. And when you can go and buy your son or daughter a $200 pair of tennis shoes just because silly Michael Jordan shows up with a pair of tennis shoes in an attaché case, then you're going to stand in line all night. I don't see you standing in line at the library overnight to
Right.
try to get in there to get a book, but you will have your raggedy behinds standing in lines, pitching a tent overnight for a pair of tennis shoes that these little kids in China have made and
For
that
$5.
for $5 or less.
Or less, yeah.
And you have your kid and your lights are about to be turned off or they've been turned off for a week or two or more, but your son or your daughter or somebody or even you with your silly behind, you're standing in line for 2 days because little Mike wants a pair of anti-shea case Michael Jordan tennis shoes. Everything is about priority and what's important. So how do we change that?
Right. That's the huge question.
That's the huge
That's
question.
the huge question. Another thing that we were talking about was that with the teachers. Now, everyone is a product of the previous generation. We had a discussion over dinner with a gentleman, and he said that they did a survey on teachers. Went and told all the teachers in this one school that it was mandatory they all take the SAT over again. The bad thing about it was that the majority of them got a score of between 400 to 800. Scary. That means that these teachers probably just skimmed through college, just skimmed through passing the exam to be a teacher, and now are teaching our children, and they have barely the skill set to teach them. So how do we? I mean, what's your thought on that?
Well, I have varying thoughts on that. First of all, to me, you can only teach for so long. They need to have, because the young people that are in the classrooms today, it's different than when we were coming along. Social media, all these other things that are impacting. I cannot imagine in urban and sometimes rural communities someone staying on site teaching for 30 years. I can't. And it depends too on if you're giving an SAT to someone who has been teaching for 30 years, I'm too tired to think. You know,
Yeah.
so there are different things you have to consider. Now, if these are new teachers who just came out of college, then they should have fared better on the SAT. And then we've always said, sometimes, minority kids don't do as well on the
Right.
SAT. There are all kinds of things that are
Right.
coming into
Okay.
play. That's really a hard one. And I'm not a strong proponent in terms of speaking up for a lot of these educators, but let's tell the whole truth,
Right.
and offer up why that may have been the case.
Right. And also, when you're just teaching one subject, you become an expert in the one subject.
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily mean that you're not a good teacher. It just means that you're an expert in one subject. Well, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and talk to Lula about some other topics that have to deal with education. Hey, and we're back. This is Dolores Sponge Keemer with Let's Communicate, and my guest today is Lula Gilliam with YES, which stands for Youth Enhancement Services. Hey, Lula.
Hello, Dolores. Getting me out here on my birthday. You ought to be ashamed.
Yes, happy birthday, happy birthday.
Anything for the children.
That's right. If you all want to call in and talk to Lula or talk to myself or join the conversation, the telephone number is 678-383-7623. 678-383-7623. So Lula, we kind of left at the break to talk about what the teachers and them not doing well and
On the SAT, yeah.
and ISAT. But I think that because of our society and the way that we are going in our society, that social media has a lot to do with what is happening with our children and how they are being raised. We could be talking to our children about one subject, but they could be talking about something totally different on social media and not even paying attention to what we have to say. So social media is kind of dictating a little bit on how our child. Are you finding that?
It is. It can be a plus as
Yeah.
well as a minus.
Yeah.
It's when we start thinking about the impact that social media had on the Middle East and how it got rid of regimes that were very dictatorial.
Right.
So that was the plus.
Right.
Now, aside from social media, parents are not making their children read.
That's true.
And I'm talking about in our community. I'm not talking about anybody else's community. They can
Right.
come on the show and talk to you about
Right.
themselves. But in the Black community, when I was driving up my street, I was going to work last week, there were several young men, waiting to catch the bus, and young ladies. The young men did not have any books. So I'm sitting in my car and I'm watching them, as the bus comes and they have the little stop sign out. And I'm asking myself, did they study last night? What did they study? Do they have the internet in their home? Did they study on the internet? Those type things should not be acceptable in our community. I can tell when young people come into the program, they can read words, but they have no comprehension. They can read a paragraph and not know one thing that was said. They are not reading, and parents are not making them read. Everything, I'm sorry, it falls back with the parents. And whether the parent or parents are working one job or 50, they chose to bring those children into the world, and I will not accept any excuses for why their children cannot read when by the time they get to first grade. You're trying to put everything on the teachers, and there are some bad teachers, and Lord knows in my years I've met some, even had some when I was coming up.
Right.
So this is not a phenomena that is just started.
Right.
We've always had awful teachers in school systems, and we've always had great teachers.
Right.
So, but we had to read in my house, and I'm sure in yours as well.
Yes.
And we have these parents that are giving these children names that they can't even spell until they get into elementary school. It's like they threw up a bunch of letters, and wherever they landed, that's what they called their child.
Right.
What do you think that does to the self-esteem of a child who cannot learn to spell their name?
Right.
That's the first thing they learn.
The name also stigmatizes them.
Yes.
I mean, if you're looking for a person to hire, LaQuisha, LaQuanda, I mean, if they're already thinking that you're of African descent, so that could be a stigma against you.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the self-esteem issue.
Oh, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, the president can have as many initiatives as he wants until we start telling the truth. And I keep saying that. Telling the truth in our community as to what is stymieing our progress, what is stopping us from moving forward until we take ownership and start trying to do something about that, then nothing is going to happen.
Right. Another thing about the Crime and Safety Summit is that if you're looking, everyone was dancing around the issue. The real issue is that parents need to take more of a role into their child's education. If we did that, we would see a total change. I couldn't believe some of the statistics that the judges, they had 4 judges, magistrate, juvenile, Supreme Court, and small claims court. Every single one of them, the small claims court had to actually branch over so that they could handle some of the other caseload. So we're talking about over the year, we're talking about over 10,000 cases at each court that's being heard. That is a ridiculous number. And and in juvenile court, he's just looking for a solution. They're looking for a solution.
I was on the Juvenile Court Restorative Board for years, and it was for those first offenders who, came in and they just got into a little bit of trouble, And I was very hard, some of the folks told me, because I'm no nonsense. I don't know if you can tell. But I am truly no nonsense, and I am not going to soft pedal anything just so you can feel good. What we need to start doing, especially for those parents who have juveniles who are offending, if, for example, your child breaks into my house, you need to pay for my door, you need to pay the deductible for my insurance, you need to pay for everything. I shouldn't be out of anything but a night's sleep. And if you have to go get a second or third job to pay for what your son or daughter did to my property or to me, or if they knock somebody down, I tell you, I just saw a young African-American man who just ran up to somebody and snatched his phone. I'm at the traffic light.
Wow.
If that young man is caught and he has to do 500 hours of community service. You don't have time to be thinking of foolishness to get into. We will stop some of this madness if, for example, my daughter had 2 laptops stolen. If you have to pay for a Mac, and Macs, the Apple, they are expensive. If you have to pay almost $1,500 for a computer, you might think twice about what little Taekwondo and Alizé are doing.
Right. You're right.
So, and we have to tell it.
We do. We need to be more honest in our community and look at the situations for what they are. You cannot have these children having babies. They're just too young. They're too exposed to sex on television. They are too exposed to grown things that they should not have any business in. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that. Well, my daughter can tell you we didn't have cable in our home when she was growing up. I wanted to make certain that television was not her best friend, that books were.
Right.
And as a result, I share with people, she got into every college that she applied to. She did well in the school that she selected. She's a Georgia Tech grad. She did very well. But those things are not by accident. They're planned.
Right.
And until we learn how to plan in the community, to plan for success. And planning for success does not mean your child becoming addicted to Housewives of Atlanta or some other bling program. Those are not reality shows, because you have to ask yourself, whose reality is that?
Right.
That you're 4 women, they're not really housewives. I didn't think any of them were married or whatever. But it's just a bunch of foolishness and cat fights. I wouldn't want my child to grow up on that. And too often we allow, and I'm just speaking collectively, we allow television to raise our children.
I think that bridgeways right into the social media subject. These how we are letting social media run raise our children too. The same Housewives of Atlanta, they can discuss that amongst themselves. They can have all these types of conversations. They can get anything on the internet. They can post anything on the internet. And I think that children are being exposed way, way, way too early to what do you think about that on social media?
They are. And then when children are texting, we already have challenges with most of our kids not being able to read and write. And when I'm reading essays in our GED class, they are writing essays the same way they're texting.
Yes.
So there is such a danger in that, because our children, some of them, I'm not saying this is a challenge with all of them,
right,
don't know how to discern fact from fantasy.
Right.
They don't.
Right.
And I had gone to a restaurant the other evening, and the owner says, "Oh, we have so many celebrities in here," and so he was telling me, there's Lisa Wu or Linda Wu or something. Like, Lisa who? I don't know who that is.
Right.
She was a housewife of Atlanta or something at one time. Maybe you've heard of her.
I don't know.
I tell him, I said, I don't watch that mess. So he was looking at me kind of strange. Then he mentioned somebody else's. I'm like, I was rolling my eyes. Like, you don't need to tell me about them. Those are not the people that I follow or would follow. But social media, it's being used to bully. Like I said, there are a lot of things that social media can be very positive. As with anything, you can find something positive.
Yes.
But when you use something that can be good and you make it a negative.
Right.
So
it's very good at raising awareness. I mean, social media is very, very good at raising awareness about different topics, and also to combine people together who would maybe never met. So it's very good for that, and it's also good for networking causes together. So it does have some good aspects to it. But as far as the children's use of it, it is not always being used for the best benefit of the child.
It's not.
Another thing that I wanted to mention about that Crime and Safety Summit is that there was a couple of people got up and talked about their neighborhoods, and I found out that there are 6 houses to every one homeless person.
Mm.
There's houses. There are houses that are out here. That why are there people living in hotels? That just doesn't make any sense. Now we are working with one child that's over in the Majestic Hotel, still a person over there. This child, I took his mom because the mayor's office wanted me to go over to the hotel and get this woman to go over and at least see the apartment that we had available for her. Some people are in denial about their own reality. Her reality is not she's not going to live on the Real Housewife of Atlanta house. She's got to live what she can afford. We did an assessment. These are the areas that you can afford, and we wouldn't even recommend some of the areas because she has a son. There's a lot of drug traffic and all of that in some of the areas. We just couldn't recommend it. So the long story short about that is that how do we get to some of these parents to get them to change the way that they're thinking?
I tell you, mental illness is real.
She definitely had mental illness.
Mental illness is real. And what we have to do is, contact counties, find out where the facilities are, sliding fee scale to free for these folks. And it does not necessarily even mean that they will go, because the last thing someone who's mentally ill recognizes is that they're mentally ill. But we have to always think as to what's in the best interest of children.
That's it. I took her there. She wasn't excited about the housing at all, even though the people in the community tried to welcome her. She wasn't excited about the housing at all. But her son, this picture, when I saw her son, he was so elated that his mother was going with me to look for housing. He actually ran the car down and came over and kissed his mother goodbye because he just looked at me like, yeah, we're going to get housing. He's stuck in a quagmire.
Well, he's stuck with a mentally ill mother.
Right. That's what I mean. He's stuck in a quagmire.
He is. And what do we do in those instances?
What do we do? Right. In these cases where you definitely know that the children are not being raised in the best environment, but then if you move them into a foster parent, is that even going to be the best environment? We have so many dysfunctional people raising dysfunctional people.
Well, we have a broken system.
That's it.
The system is broken. They are not dealing with foster care the way that foster care system should be dealt with. They're letting anyone. There are some people who are foster parents you shouldn't even give a puppy to, not to mention a child.
Right.
So we have to find a way. And now I think at the state level, at the State House, and it didn't get passed, they were talking about privatizing the portion of DFACS that deals with foster care. That's not the answer either. The answer is identifying good people.
Right.
Good people that are worthy of being foster parents.
Now, you're saying good people. I can think of a lot of good people that would like to be foster parents, that would like to help, but would they like to raise a child? I mean, you're talking, my mother, she raised 12 extra children, plus myself. That's 13 extra, plus we were an emergency house for children. You don't find people like that. And then force them all to go to school. Either you're going to go to school or go into the service, but you're going to do something positive when you get out of here. How are we going to instill that in our parents to let them know that, hey, you got to prepare your kids?
Well, we have to recognize that not everyone is a parent. And I've said that before.
Yeah.
And in terms of foster care, we have to start identifying those people who are like your mother.
Yeah.
And not someone who's looking for an extra paycheck.
Right.
And will bring children or child after child into their home. And there's some people that I've seen over the years, they told me that they were foster parents, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I wouldn't even put a stuffed animal in a house with them. But why is it our system allows them to do that? So our system is broken.
Yeah. But for these good households to step up, that's a lot to invest in a child. It's a lot of responsibility.
Well, the government too, and and I'm not a very strong proponent of how government works because I know most of the time it doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
Is that government have to stop starving good people
Yes.
who are taking these children on. They have cut the foster care allowances so much. And it's hard if you're having to put in a lot of your money and you might be a really great foster parent,
Mm-hmm.
but the government is bleeding you dry and not saying, okay, here is this pot over here. We know that you're dealing with a child that has mental, challenges and they're going to need some extra help. And it's like that in just about every government agency, whether it's the Department of Juvenile Justice, whether it's DFACS or whatever. When in group homes, a friend of mine is closing her group home because they have just cut resources, and she's an awesome facilitator for group homes.
Mm-hmm.
But the government will give, and everything is so buddy-buddy, will give their friends all these contracts that do nothing to improve the state, to improve the community. But people that they don't know that are really good, they bleed them dry.
Wow. This is a fantastic topic to talk about because there are so many problems and systemic problems. We can't address them all, but if we have experts work on each different topic, I think that we can really make some headway if we really have people who are committed to making a change. There's got to be people who are committed to making change and willing to roll up their sleeves, give that extra hours to go ahead and do that. Don't you believe?
I do, but people like us, they wear us out.
Yeah, they do. That's
We're
what it
those
is.
workhorses, and we are truly good at what we do, and we want to do it.
Right.
But we're not the people that get the money,
Right.
To help us to expand and enhance those causes that we're fighting for. We're not those people. Now, they will wear us out with meetings, going down to talk to folk, and I'm not doing that anymore. I tell you, I'm very selective about the meetings I go to. And then you'll hear about one of their buddies that belonged to some organization that some group or some foundation gives them $1 million to do a study. We don't need any more studies. We know everything that's going on in our communities is just another way to pay your friend, but we don't say anything.
Right.
We're so busy being busy and tired that we really cannot address that.
And we need to have there's so much requirements that even if you did get money, there's so much requirements to stay in compliance that you have to attend these meetings and that you have to network and that you have to do these other extracurricular things outside of your program that take hours and
Forever.
hours.
And we deal with that as well. And I'm always thinking, if government required from themselves what they require from us, then they wouldn't be so screwed.
Right.
You're
Right. You're right. I mean, the statistics that you have to gather, there's another agency that's coming out where they're going to help you with the statistics that you need to gather for your area. Morehouse is putting that in place where we couldn't get statistics on our own populations. They're actually going to do a conference here on next week, and there's going to be 30 doctors from different schools that are going to talk about this subject on how do we get our statistics together because we don't have any for our specific areas. So you know what I'm talking about. There's our specific statistics that will help us see the picture so that we can move forward. Because you do have these systems, but the systems that, at least that I've worked on, don't give you the true picture of what you're trying to capture. It's like they're setting you up for failure.
Well, you know what? I don't depend on them anyway. And crime statistics, you can always pull from the police department and hope that they're telling the truth. Everything is a matter of veracity. If someone is honorable and if they have the integrity to tell the true story.
Right. Plus, statistics can be altered
They
to say the story that you want.
They can, exactly. So I don't need a statistic to tell me that that young man who came into my office that he needs his GED.
Right.
He's out of school. He's coming to see me.
Right.
I don't need a statistic to tell me that he's going through some things. I can see that.
Right.
And talking to him 5 minutes, I hear that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's going through some heavy things.
Right.
Young man whose mother had to quit work because a 22-year-old daughter had a brain tumor.
Wow.
And so those are the things I understand. I understand need.
Right.
I mean, real need, whereas people want to change things in their lives, but these are the obstacles that are in the way. So how do I remove that obstacle? I tell them, I waive our little assessment and orientation fee so this kid can come and be in a position to complete his secondary education.
Right. So you're dealing with the grassroots level, but in order for us to paint the picture, we need the statistics. We've got to paint the picture with. I mean, they're asking you for statistics in the report, so
They
you got
do. They
you
do.
got to paint
And
the
we give them statistics.
right, your specific statistics, but what they're specifically talking about is for the demographics for our community and what are the things that really need to be addressed and what are those. See, you may have statistics, this person may have statistics, etc., but there's no place that we can go to and get concrete statistics on the whole population that you may be able to impact.
I think the Center for Disease Control, the CDC, have a lot of statistics, in particular on violence, since they recognize violence as an issue in our community.
They're talking about I think what they're trying to address is the disparity between the races so that they can address some of the specific issues and get money directed towards us specifically. So, but, you know, race is always going to play a part.
Oh, it does.
Regardless
I don't
of
discount racism at all. I know it will always be with us. I know where I am. I'm in Georgia.
Right.
But it's like that throughout the country,
Right.
throughout the world.
Right.
And if we think it's not, then, you know.
When are we going to reach above that? You know, when are we going to look at? I mean, our state is falling apart.
It's going to take a while.
But because we are falling apart, when are we going to actually see that racism is a systemic problem? It needs to be eradicated.
Well, it won't happen as long as we're not educating our children.
You're right.
It won't. What better way to control a people than through education?
Right.
So if our
or the
children,
lack of.
the lack of,
Mm-hmm.
and if our children are being educated or not being educated, then we will continue to have some of the same, as you said, systemic issues in our community that we've always talked about and that we've always had.
Right. You're right. Well, we've talked about the issue, and now let's listen to what Zoe has to say, because Zoe always knows, and she always knows the answer. So let's listen to what Zoe
Now,
has to say.
how old is Zoe?
Now, Zoe is 7 years old, and Zoe has an opinion about what she thinks that we should do about the educational system and how she works, how she does in school, and then what she thinks about the educational system.
Okay.
I think that, what do you think? How do you think that education goes along with getting a job?
Because if a teacher and you're grown up and you're still at school, if she asks you what you want to be and you learn about it, then you can find the right place where you can work at, what kind of job you want to be at.
So you have to go to school, get educated for your job, so you can get an education for your job. So school goes along with what kind of job you get. So if you're real smart, you can become a president, or you can become a nurse or a doctor, because you stayed in school. So if you don't stay in school, then what happens? If you don't go to school, then you can't
Learn.
and so you can't get those kind of jobs, huh?
Yeah, you can't.
So what's so why should we go to school? So we should stay in school?
Mhm.
And why should we stay in school?
So you can learn more.
Mhm. So you can get a good job,
Mhm.
and so you can make a lot of money.
Mhm.
What are you going to be when you grow up?
I want to be a fashion designer.
You want to be a fashion designer? Wow. And what do they do?
Um, they design dresses for the people that are gonna model on stage.
Wow. You got to go to school for that?
Mhm.
If you didn't go to school, do you think you could still do that?
No.
You would be behind everybody else. A lot of people went to school for it, and they would know how to sew and everything, huh?
Yes.
It would take you hard. It would be harder for you, huh? If you didn't go to school.
Yeah.
So, what would you have to go after you finish high school? Then what you gonna do?
Go to college.
Mhm. And you're gonna study fashion merchandising.
Mhm.
All right. And you're gonna be a big designer, huh?
Mhm.
And you're gonna design people's wedding dresses and fashions and bathing suits and pants and shirts and shoes, pocketbooks.
Mhm.
What do you want? Which one do you like best?
I like wedding dresses.
You do?
Mhm.
You think you'd like to design wedding dresses?
Mhm.
Yeah. You think that'd be fun?
Mhm.
You think people would like to see people with your wedding dress on?
Mhm.
It'd be fun, huh?
Mhm.
What else do you think? Your mommy's going to school? Have you been to her school?
No.
You haven't. She never took you to the university?
No.
She never took you to the college so that you could see what other people do,
No.
what big people do to go to school?
No.
Shame on her.
I will be taking her to Life University as soon as I get my acceptance letter. Thank you very much.
Mama.
You like school a lot?
Yes.
Yeah, I like school too. I wish I could stay in school all the time. But you have to make money. So that's why you go to school. You go to school after you finish all you get good grades in school, that when school is free, so that when you get ready to graduate, you can go to a good school, and they give you money to go to school. Because you're real smart, right?
Mhm.
That's what you want. You want to get money so you can go to school for free. Right?
Mhm.
What'd you think about the video? The first video.
I liked it.
You did? What'd you think about it?
I thought it was really good because learning is fun and playing with friends is fun, and most of all, school is fun.
School is fun. So everybody should go to school, right?
Mhm.
And for people who don't go to school, what should we do?
Go see the people and ask them if they want to go to school.
Yeah. What happens if they say no? What should we do?
We should say that they would have to, and if they still say yes,
What happens if they say no? What happens if they still say no? I'm not going to school.
and we could tell them that if they don't go to school and they don't learn, they won't go to college and they won't know anything.
And what happens if you don't go to college?
You wouldn't get a job and you wouldn't earn any money.
And so what happens if you don't earn any money?
You wouldn't be able to buy a house or anything.
So what happens if you can't buy a house?
You would probably have to go to school and then you could go to college.
Yeah, but what happens if they don't do all those things? If they don't do those things, what happens to people that don't go to learn and don't make any money?
They would probably have to live on the street or the sidewalk.
So what should we do?
We should tell them that if they don't go to school, they won't go to college and they would live on the sidewalk.
We should make it their choice. And so if they choose to live on the sidewalk, what should we do?
After a few days, if they don't like it, and if they do like it, if they do like it, like living on the street, and then we should leave them alone and have a good time on the street. And if they say they don't like living on the street, we'll ask them if they want to go to school.
Oh, I like that answer. Well, that's been our show for today. This has been Let's Communicate, and my guest was Lula Gilliam, and she is at Youth Enhancement Services. Lula, tell them where your place is located.
We're at 100 Edgewood in the United Way Woodruff Volunteer Service Center, and they can find us online at www.yesgeorgia, Georgia is spelled out, .org.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
The only way things will change is if we get involved in our community and make the changes we seek. Until next week, this is Dolores Bunch-Keemer, and this has been Let's Communicate.
Thank you.